Hi everyone, Sajid, Amit here, and in this review I just wanted to share my views on whether if you are a HD600 user or an HD650 user, whether you should consider upgrading to the HD800S. And it's not a very easy question to answer because these headphones, the 600 and the 650, sound very different from the HD800S. And I know people who have bought these headphones and don't want to listen to anything else. I know people who have bought these headphones and don't want to upgrade to anything else, with good reason. And I know people who like these headphones but don't like the 800S, and I know people who like the 800S but do not like the 600 series, so they do not like the 650 and the 600. Now, this video is made for those who already have a 650 or a 600, or at least know what either of these two headphones sound like and are considering whether or wondering whether this upgrade is going to be suitable for them. So I'm going to try to take you through my experience having A/B'd and tested all three headphones for a few hours today, using this chain, which is the Holo Audio May Level 2 DAC, wonderful DAC, the Ferrum Audio Ur and Hypsis, which is a new sort of review stack that I have, considering buying it, and the Primo Luna Evo 400 tube preamplifier, which again will get its own video. That the video for that might have dropped already. If not, it will drop soon. So without further ado, I just want to do a very quick discussion on whether you should upgrade if you have one of these two. Very quickly, this headphone is of course a very famous headphone, as is this. The 600 came before the 650. The 650 tries to sort of go for a slightly different kind of a tuning. This has more energy from 6K to 10K, which gives it more air, and I think just overall a more perception of openness. This has more bass energy noticeably, in mid bass in particular, and because of the greater amount of energy in mid bass which comes through, and lower mids, this also has a certain warmth and tonal richness which people love and crave. However, on complex tracks, I think this becomes muddy and congested sounding. This is slightly better on congested tracks. On bassy tracks, I think like rock and metal, this does slightly better because this has more punch and pretty impressive levels of punch. This has a slightly weaker bass. So that's the comparison between these two. I do think they're fairly good all-rounders, and as a matter of fact, by all-rounder I mean the capacity or the ability to play all genres well. And if I had to do a separate ranking for all-rounders, not paying heed to things like technical performance, I think I would rank this in my top 10, and this would be somewhere close. But yeah, so this does bass better, warmer, this does treble better, this has a nice amounts of air, and when listening to certain tracks, especially complex tracks, when this became slightly annoying and boring, switching to this, I just felt there was more separation and just a greater sense of stage. Of course, stage in the sense that, frequency response has a way of affecting how people perceive stage. So the greater treble energy here does have lent to the perception this has better staging, not in terms of width, but just in terms of separation overall and air around instruments. So that's it for the comparison between these two. What happens when you shift or move to the 800S? Well, I'm who I am with my own subjective preferences, and I think that once you shift from these two to this, the first thing you notice is more transparency. The headphone here just vanishes, I think, from the top of your head. Firstly, the comfort levels of this is just mind-blowing compared to these. I mean, they're supposed to be clampy, and they are, but I've over time gotten used to both of them in terms of their clamps. I don't mind the clamp as much on either of these. However, with this is like super comfortable. It just floats on your head. And the sound stage, if you don't care about headphones sound stage and have not listened to this, you owe yourself a listen, because you might start caring about sound stage. I feel like a few things give us a sense of premiumness in terms of the sonic performance. One is, of course, resolution. More expensive headphones invariably have better resolution, and I personally associate soundstage with better priced or higher priced headphones. So for me, the more money you spend, the better soundstage you ought to get, which doesn't always happen, because you have headphones like Utopia, which are amazing technical marvels, but don't have necessarily very wide sound stages, while also having deep soundstage though. So that's the Utopia. But yeah, I mean, the soundstage here opens up a lot when you shift from either of these to this. It just becomes more grandiose. It's a more diffuse presentation and a thinner presentation, but it's not, I think, thin on absolute terms, unless your reference is, of course, something like a 650, which is a thicker presentation. But if it's not this, then I think you like the soundstage width and depth and how it opens up, and the imaging is extremely precise with copious amounts of air around instruments. It's really magnificent. Like, I was listening to this, staring out of my window, listening to this off a DAB, and for hours I felt this wasn't on my head, and I just was mesmerized, immersed in this. Of course, to like this, you cannot be treble sensitive, because I do not find it bright, but on certain chains it can be. And if you're very treble sensitive, this might be bright. However, like, what it does really well though, because of having this greater amount of treble energy, is that, so let's take something that you don't associate with treble, like drums, right? But drums still token treble frequencies, especially cymbals. So the overall percussion, for percussion to sound natural, you do need a fair amount of treble, right? So when you play drums or drum heavy tracks, like I was testing this with Tool's Chocolate Chip Trip, which is, a very famous song. A lot of reviewers and audiophiles will listen to Tool's Chocolate Chip Trip to test for bass, because it has this amazing sort of drum performance from Danny, Tool's drummer, and great soundstage. So when I was playing that song of both these headphones, they both sounded great. This sounded slightly better because of its greater mid-bass punch. But shifting to this, you think that this would falter, because this, as a matter of fact, is more bass energy than either this or that. However, I preferred this for that song, which has amazing drum work. Now, the reason being, first of all, the soundstage here is phenomenal, and that song tokens soundstage and imaging chops of a headphone really well, because it's a very nice sort of 180-degree sort of panning that happens on that track with drums. It goes from your left ear all the way to your right ear and back, right? So this headphone is able to capture that really well, almost very speaker-like. And I've tested that track with speakers as well, so I know what I'm talking about in this case, I hope. But anyway, but in addition to the soundstage presentation for that song, this headphone also does the drum and cymbals really well for that track, because it is so incisive and so clear that I think you just get that finer nuances, the microdynamics of drum hits, of cymbal crashes, the splashes, the sense of reverb, the sense of decay, all that comes through with this. So this also does drum well. So what I'm getting at here is that if you like bass heavy track, this is not a pushover necessarily. Of course, it doesn't do what a Utopia can do in terms of absolute impact and even texture of drums. This cannot do what an Abyss AB1266 5TC can do, but this still does drums well. And this is, of course, a fraction of the Utopia's cost, a fraction of the TC's cost, right? So this does bass tastefully. I like the bass here. I like the mid-range here. It's thinner than here, but it's still extremely natural sounding. The Sennheiser house sound comes through so prominently even here that you don't need to worry about the timbre and all that, the mid-range naturalness with this, because this still does mid-range really well. And of course, when it comes to treble and air, this is unbeatable, at least on this table. So is this for you if you own either of these two headphones? That, like I said, depends on how much you need absolute bass energy and how much you can or appreciate treble clarity and incisiveness. If you appreciate treble clarity, incisiveness, air, soundstage, imaging, and if you are not an absolute bass head who needs bass presentation or bass heavy presentation from every headphone, you should consider upgrading. But yeah, I mean, if you're very used to the warmth here, this will take a bit of getting used to, guys, because if you're very used to the 650, this might come off as bright. But I do recommend you get out of your comfort zone if you use the 650 only and try some brighter headphones, because you do get used to them, and at some point you start appreciating all the details and the nuances that higher quality, more analytical and technically proficient headphones give you. Because a lot of people who can afford to buy more expensive headphones that I personally know will still stick to this. And it's not, referring to any one person, but quite a few. This was my first audiophile headphone, which I loved, and I'm still considering adding it back to my stable for nostalgia's sake. And I do want to say that these headphones are still worth owning, even if you have a Susvara or an Abyss AB12665 5TC or a Utopia. That's my subjective opinion, but let me explain why. These headphones, equally, I think, are such wonderful headphones to have on your head when you're doing work, when you're not doing critical listening. And I think because they play all tracks well, right? And all genres well. And you don't want to be, if you're writing a paper, let's say, if you're doing some work on your computer, writing emails, and you don't want to be distracted by, too much detail. If you don't want to have to change tracks because certain track is not pairing well with, let's say, Utopia or an HD800S even. If you just want to just immerse yourself in music and hours of listening while you do something else, like writing a paper or writing emails or what have you, if headphone listening is something you do in the background, then these headphones, I think, are among the best out there. Because they're pleasurable, they're easy to listen to, they do everything well, and they're not very distracting. All right, so I hope that was helpful. I just wanted to share my views on some of these fine headphones from Sennheiser, one of my favorite brands. I really like Sennheiser. I like all these headphones, and I know these are very popular, as is this. I just wanted to share my views in case you're considering upgrading from either this or this to that, or in case you're considering adding these to your stable, even if you own higher price headphones like I do. So that's it from me. I hope this was interesting or fun or useful. I'm Sajid Amit. Please like this video if you like it, and subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye-bye.